So yeah, as Steve said, I'm Steve Kelly. I'm a senior long-range planner, transportation planner. One of my roles is the countywide TDT coordinator. So I don't actually collect or administer the charge. What I do is answer questions and work on sort of the policy side of the transportation development tax. I'm going to occasionally refer to this as the TDT, but it is the Transportation Development Tax. And I've seen some of you in the audience may know more about this than I actually do. It is applied throughout Washington County, including within the cities. So that works good. So a quick presentation overview. I'm going to talk about transportation funding and how the Transportation Development Tax fits within that picture. Discuss when you pay, the rate charges, when the rate changes, and finally give a brief, really brief, since we're short on time, overview of credit procedures and hopefully leave a few minutes for questions at the end. So a brief summary of transportation funding in Washington County. In the back there is a little brochure that has a Transportation Funding 101, and there's actually a couple of different videos on there, and I think they're both very well done. At least the ones I've seen are very well done. So our transportation funding picture, we show this picture of the three-legged stool, and each of the legs are different sorts of revenue sources. The first one is what we call the road fund, what most people refer to as the gas tax, but it also includes our vehicle registration fees and the weight mile tax, and that's primarily used for maintenance. And then we also have a property tax, which is called our Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program, and that is primarily used to address existing transportation capacity and safety deficiencies or issues. And then we have our Transportation Development Tax, which is a system development charge or impact fee that is used to help keep up with growth. I would like to say that we've been working on the next round of our Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program. It's called MSTIP 3E, and there's lots of information that has recently been posted online. There's a list of potential project candidates that are out there, and we are soliciting comments on that. So back to the Transportation Development Tax. The major principles are it's a county-wide tax and applied uniform rate structure, including within the cities. There was a significant rate increase voted into place in the fall of 2008, which became effective in 2009, and it was phased in through 2014. Now, if any of you remember that time period, I'm sure you all do, there's never a good time for increasing rates, but that might have been the worst time to have picked for phasing in a major rate increase. But it was phased in completely in the fall of 2014, and now there is an index that adjusts the rates annually. So we've had a transportation impact fee in Washington County since really unincorporated area since November of 1985. It was referred to a general election in unincorporated in '86, and then was included within the cities starting in 1990, and basically stayed that way with index adjustments through 2008. And then the TDT came in and revised the rate structure, increased the charges, and was really an update of the rules. We also have two supplemental charges in Washington County that I'm not going to cover today in any detail, but there's a supplemental charge in North Bethany and a supplemental charge now in Bonnie Slope West area. And those follow the same principles and structure as the Transportation Development Tax. So for calculating your TDT rate, it's a simplified version of what we had before. It's still based on the average amount of traffic for a development of that type, and it's due when a building permit is issued. For a change of use, you calculate what the existing use, what that rate would be now, and then deduct that from the proposed use. And we do allow a payment over time, or a Bancroft, but it does require a lien on the property. So it's pretty rarely used by the development community because of that ongoing long-term lien on the property. So available online is a TDT self-calculation form, and I will give the website at the end of the presentation here so you can write it down if you haven't found it yet. But this is a very handy tool that's used to inform both you and your development as well as our staff about what the calculation would be. And I like to refer people to it because it's really a very helpful thing. I will point out that I was looking for Sean Harriser. He's on our staff. I have some of his business cards with me. He's the person that does our calculation for anything other than a single family rate. And it's worth asking. If you don't know what the category is, it's worth coming to staff and saying, what do you think my category is going to be here? Because one of the biggest complaints we get is somebody comes in with something that they think is a known rate, or they haven't calculated it, and then it's more than they expected. The opposite, nobody complains about if it's less than they expected. So I mentioned before an index calculation. It's built in and it goes up every year beginning on July 1st. It cannot go up more than 10%. This year on July 1 the index will go up just over 2%, and the index simply follows the adjustment formula methodology, and is a change that goes into effect every July 1. So if you have a development that you think you're going to be able to get in either June 28th or July 3rd, just before the 4th of July holiday, you might want to think about trying to get it in June.
Steve, what triggers the date that's applied? The date you hold the permit or submit for it?
Each jurisdiction does that a little bit differently. It's generally the date when it's calculated, when we calculate the charge, so the date it's submitted. I believe that's the case most of the time. So I'm going to get into credits a little bit, but very, very, very quickly it looks like. So if you build an improvement, as you go through our traffic review process and our community development code, you may be required to build a half street or something else that triggers an improvement, and you're eligible for credit for components of those improvements. It's generally the portion of the road that you've built that is bigger than a standard local street. And that's some of the other complaints we get, is people don't understand what components were eligible, or they have a credit, they submit their receipts and are actually expecting a cash refund from the credit, and that's not the case. It's simply a credit towards the charge. So here is a credit eligibility flow chart that if I had time I would try to walk through. Really, it's important to communicate and work with our staff on what components are eligible. The key here is if it's an arterial or collector street, you're required to do improvements to it, and you do improvements that are bigger than the local street standard, exceeds the applicable local street standard, then that is potentially eligible. So it's important to work with our staff on that. There is information on our website about figuring that out. But in the interest of time, I'll move on. The website is listed there. Credits last for 10 years after the credit is issued, and there is some ability to transfer that to other jurisdictions or other properties you may have, other sites within the same jurisdiction, I should say. And the website is listed up there, and with that I'll open it up for questions.